Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, hello. Today I am going to film the video that we wait for all year round, and that is the favorite books of 2022. 2022 has been a very interesting year, not just in a reading sense, but also academically and socially. And it is not the best reading year I've had because last night I was watching the 2021 video and I read so many favorites. I read like 16 favorites, and I definitely have less this year, but I did find some all-time favorites. So at least we had some books that saved the year for us. On number 9, I have a nonfiction book, which I discovered nonfiction this year. I've been loving so many audiobooks, and on number 9 I have Greedy, Notes on a Bisexual Who Wants Too Much by Jen Winston. This is a book I discovered on a book club called Saf Lit, run by Nina Hines. It's basically Jen Winston detailing her sexual awakening / sexuality journey since she was a teenager to the present day. It talks a lot about what it means to be bisexual, and as someone who identifies as bisexual / queer / sapphic, there's a lot of things I did relate to, and then there's a lot of things I did not relate to. But the thing is, not all bisexuals are the same. The bisexual experience has a very wide range, and that's the beauty of being bisexual, I guess. Not everyone is the same. And so you get to hear her side of the story, or I guess her side of being bisexual. And her story is a lot of other people's classic story where she dated a lot of men. She thought she was straight for a very long time, and had her sexuality buried down on the back of her head, trying to ignore it, trying to not think about it too much. But there came one moment where she could not ignore it anymore, and she really wanted to date women for real. That is not my experience. My experience is that I am very sure I like girls, I want to date girls, and I am not sure if I want to date guys. So it's kind of flipped, but that doesn't matter. I still really enjoy the book. There's like one passage that I really like, where it talks about how a lot of people, including myself, feel that being bisexual is not queer enough, that you need to either identify as straight or as fully, completely gay, which I felt a lot, especially since I have a preference for girls. I do feel that inclination to identify as a lesbian, but the thing is, in order to identify as a lesbian, you need to completely exclude the opposite gender from your attraction and from your potential dating. And that is something I don't think I want to do. So therefore, I'm bisexual. And a lot of people feel that just because they identify as bisexual, they can't fully be part of the LGBT community. A lot of people are in straight passing relationships and therefore don't feel like they can be part of the LGBT community. But you don't need anyone to validate your sexuality. If you think you're bisexual and that's all you need. You don't need to justify it through any way. Next book is another queer book, and it's actually a queer graphic novel memoir, which we love to see. And this one is called Gender Queer, and is by someone who identifies as non-binary / genderqueer, and Maya is detailing her story about growing up, discovering the genderqueer spectrum, non-binary gender identity. And again, as someone who identifies as non-binary, it's very interesting because again, not all non-binary people are the same. There is a range within the non-binary experience. There are different reasons why people identify as non-binary. For example, for myself, I am someone who presents as clearly feminine, but the reason why I identify as non-binary is not because I want to be more androgynous or more in the middle, because non-binary is not a third gender. It's more related towards like my attraction, but also the way I feel on the inside, not the way I present on the outside. It's just sometimes I just don't feel like a woman. I feel like I have no gender, and I feel I'm just a human going through the world and living my life. And gender is a social construct, and we do just need to like maybe abolish it many years in future. But anyways, that's just my feelings and my ideas. Number 7, I have a book that I read on audiobook that I also really enjoyed, and that's called Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. So I've talked about this book and how I discovered it before, but basically Dodie on YouTube is a very talented musician. I've followed her for a very long time. She makes incredible music. I've covered it on my YouTube channel where I do music so many times. She made a music video in 2021 for her song I Kissed Someone It Wasn't You. And the director of that music video was Hazel Hayes, who's Dodie's best/close friend. And there was a live show announcing this music video, and they talked about it a lot, and I watched the live show obviously because I was a freshman back then. I was like eating lunch and watching this live show. Hazel talked about how she had written a book called Out of Love, and I was like, this sounds like a very intelligent woman, very talented. She directed this fantastic music video. I want to read her book. And so it took me like 6 to 7 months to finally pick it up, and it was 2022 by that point. And in January, I started listening to the audiobook, and she narrates the audiobook, by the way, which is fantastic. And I started reading this, and I was blown away. So this book is about a girl who is unnamed, and the boy whose name is Theo. I remembered, yes. And it details their relationship backwards. So it starts with them breaking up, and it ends with them meeting each other. And it's something I had never read before. I love the writing style. If I had a physical book, I would have annotated the heck out of it. And I highly recommend it, even as someone who doesn't really enjoy like straight love stories. I thought it was very well done. And I will read everything else that she writes because she's truly amazing. And then number 6 is a book that got very popular this year. Everybody read it. And that book is none other than Jennette McCurdy's memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died. So I read this book when I kind of went on a hiatus with my reading. It was kind of a desert of reading where once my 3rd year fall semester started, I basically stopped reading completely because I am a STEM major. 3rd year is usually a very difficult year for most STEM majors. I am majoring in biochemistry. This was the year where we actually started biochemistry as a subject. And boy, oh boy, was it difficult. I struggled a lot, but in the end I got an A. I was hanging on a thread though, but I did get an A. The time that I had for reading before I went to bed, was replaced by studying. And so the only times that I read, and even that was very rare because I listened to music a lot, was between classes when I would walk from one class to another, or when I would sometimes go home and listen to books while on the bus. So I think I only read like 2 books during the fall semester, which is crazy to think about because I read so many in the first half of the year. When I was younger, I did watch Sam and Cat a lot, but I did not watch iCarly. So the only way I knew Jennette McCurdy was from Sam and Cat. I really enjoyed that show as much as you can enjoy a Nickelodeon show. I mean, they're not fine art and literature, but you know, they're enjoyable, they're fun to watch, they're funny, they're cute, I guess. To be honest, the beginning was not my favorite. I did not really enjoy hearing about like a 6-year-old's actor journey, but once we started to get to the meat of things, when she became a teenager and grew up basically, oh my god, it was mind-blowing. So please check the trigger warnings for this book. There's a lot of dark stuff that happens, and the fact that it's actually real makes it even more concerning. And I will never watch Sam and Cat or even iCarly with the same eyes again. I don't think I'm gonna watch it ever again, because now that I know the stuff that Jennette was going through while filming that show, I can't support this show anymore. But it's truly sickening to hear all the things that she was going through, to hear about her eating disorder and her abuse that was caused by her own mother. It was very hard to read. And in the very, very end, there's a part in the audiobook, which I did read, where she actually starts to tear up while reading. It's in a part where she's talking to her therapist and discussing about her mom after she had died. It's a very, very emotional book. Please proceed with caution. But it was very well done. And I'm very excited to see what her fiction will look like, because she is going to write fiction, which I'm excited about. And then number 5 is another nonfiction book. See, I read so many great nonfiction this year. It was a book I read for school. So in my spring semester of second year, I had a class about climate change, fiction, and film, because as part of our curriculum, we have to take these like English type classes. They're basically about reading books, reading articles, writing essays. It's basically an English class, but it's not called an English class. It's just a university thing. So I had this climate change class, and in the end, we had a final project / final paper. And I decided to do mine on books written by famous people about climate change, but they're not famous because of their activism of climate change. So I read 2 books that I had my eye on for a very long time. And one of them obviously made it to the list. The one that made it to the list is Jonathan Safran Foer's We Are the Weather. So as you may or may not know, I am a very big fan of Jonathan Safran Foer. I had one of his books on my favorites list last year, and I also read another book by him. That was that Tree of Codes, very rare and unique book with the paper that has like little cutouts. And I'm planning to read more by him next year, obviously. But this year, I did read We Are the Weather. It's written in like a literary way because he's obviously a novelist, so it makes it very readable. But it also calls you out on so many things you do that impact the planet negatively. And I love it so much because he's just so angry in every single chapter. And I was like, yes, we should be angry. But in the end, it ends on a hopeful note. So despite all of these bad things, we can still save the planet. We can still make a difference. As someone who doesn't like writing essays, this one was particularly fun to write because I was actually reading books I was low-key interested in. So it was a good experience. I am stupid. I forgot to hold this up. This is how the book looks like. I tabbed it a lot. It's very beautiful. Number 4 is a book I read way back in January last year. And that book is Morris by E.M. Forster. So the reason why this book is so special to me, number 1, is because it's a gay novel written in 1913/14 that has a happy ending, which we don't really get a lot. A lot of gay characters are killed off. They have sad endings, they don't end up together. This one has a happy ending. In this one, the couple does get together in the end, which, oh my god, we love to see. And it's basically about this boy named Morris who goes to Cambridge, I think? He goes to university there, and he meets a boy named Clive. And that's all I'm gonna say. Just go into it. It's a classic, but it's a very readable classic. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the movie. And if you've been on the channel before, you know there's a reaction video of the movie, which is, in my opinion, hilarious. I don't know if it's hilarious to other people, but to me, it's very, very hilarious. And I highly recommend the movie as well because it's very well done. It really stays true to the book. And it's so much fun. It is so much fun. I love it. Number 3 is a book I had anticipated for a very long time. It got announced, I think, in May 2021. It came out in January 2022, and I bought it the day it was released, but I didn't read it the day it was released, obviously, because I have school. I'm busy. So I waited a whole semester for all my schoolwork to end and all my drama to end. So much drama. And I finally read it. That book is a very big chunker called To Paradise by an author that is very near and dear to my heart. Hanya Nagahara wrote my favorite book of all time, and that is The Little Life. And so excited to read this one. I've also read her first novel, which I didn't really like that much. But this one was very good. So this book is divided into 3 parts. In my opinion, the third part is the best one. The first and the second are good. I didn't really enjoy them. I know some people did. I know some people didn't. So I guess it depends. Just see for yourself. If you want to read the whole thing, I mean, if you're a fan of Hanya, you'll obviously read the whole thing. But yeah, this is about a bunch of characters. Well, it's not just a bunch. There's 3 groups of characters in each part, obviously, respectively. And they all have the same names. There's a David, there's a Charles, there's an Edward, and these names, like, they're present in all 3 parts. It's obviously different people because each part is 100 years apart. I'm saying part so many times. The first part is about a man in the 1800s who is meeting 2 men. One of them is called Charles and one of them is Edward. Charles is a more stable guy. Edward is a more adventurous guy. And you see which one does David pick to be with. The second part is about, I think, another David. Yes. And he works for a guy named Charles, but he is much, much younger than Charles. And again, there's a relationship situation. David's dad is in Hawaii, and again, there's another Edward guy who's the adventurous one and who wants to bring some change. It's been a while since I read this book, as you can tell. Go watch the video that I made when I was just finished. And then the third part is my favorite. Again, I'm not going to try with character names because it's not about the character names, but it's basically about a pandemic. People who get sick actually have long-lasting impacts. They have to take a medicine to recover, but the medicine kind of makes you deteriorate. Your brain does not work the same after you take this medicine. So it's obviously with long-lasting impacts that can affect your life forever. And it's about a woman this time, whose name I obviously forgot. But we follow her as she has grown up and she had this disease when she was a child and she had to take the medicine. And she does have these mental comprehension problems. We follow the main character and see where she goes to work, who she ends up marrying, and how her life changes when she encounters someone. It's a lot of commentary. This is not like Little Life. Little Life is a character study over many, many years. It's a very emotional book. This one is more Hanya Yanagihara's thoughts on America. If you want to know more, watch the other video that I did, because the themes of this book are more fresh in my mind on that video. Watch other videos and what other people think. I am on the camp of people who did really love A Little Life and this book, but obviously this is not A Little Life. This is completely different, so don't expect the same thing. But that doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. You have to enjoy it for what it does, and I did enjoy it for what it did. Definitely great social commentary that can be applied to the situation of the world today. Book number 2 is another nonfiction and the last one I'm going to talk about for this video. This book is so good, but I feel like some people enjoy it more than me because they have a lot more background information that I didn't have. That doesn't mean I did not like it. I actually loved it so much. And that book is Girls Can Kiss Now by Jill Gutowitz. So I discovered Sapph-Lit this year, and another book that I got from that Instagram page was Girls Can Kiss Now. This is a book of essays written by Jill Gutowitz talking about how lesbianism or sapphic relationships have become more and more mainstream throughout the years. And she talks about these pop culture moments that have been on the center of attention, that people have talked about, and there were things I hadn't heard about before. And that's why I say, if you have heard about these things before, if you were there when they happened, I guess it could be a more fun book to read. So I heard that this book is basically for the Twitter lesbians. I am not on Twitter, which I kind of regret now because I feel like I've missed out on so many things. Very, very enjoyable book still, because it's not just about these pop culture moments. It's also about Jill's personal life and how she slowly discovers her sexuality. But she also had the moments of compulsory heterosexuality, trying to be with men and it not working out, obviously. Her having a very intense female friendship that was the catalyst of her discovering her sexuality. And in the end, also her finding her partner who she's still with today. It brought me so much joy. I related to so many things she talked about, and it's just so much fun, and I know I will read it again in the future because it's just sapphic joy at its finest. And now we're gonna talk about my favorite book of the year. But there's a surprise, because it's not just one book. It's actually 3. So this year, I rediscovered an author. And that author is none other than the icon, the legend, the moment, Sally Rooney. So let's go back to 2020. Before the pandemic, I picked up Normal People because I heard about it in the podcast I listened to called Books Unbound. And back then it wasn't as popular as it later became. And I picked it up and I did not like it. I DNF'd it. It was not for me. I was like, this is boring. I don't like it. I returned it to the library. So I thought, okay, Sally Rooney is not for me. Normal People is not for me. I am not a fan. I don't care. Okay, we fast forward to 2022. The show for Conversations with Friends comes out. And I pick up, just randomly, on Libby, Conversations with Friends. And I love it. It's great. I love so many quotes. This is the book where I found my favorite quote of the year that goes like, life is basically you waiting for things to happen and not happening, because especially like this year, I've related to this quote so much on a deep level. And then I start watching the show for Normal People and Conversations with Friends, obviously. And as I'm watching the show for Normal People, I'm like, whoa, I love this. And so I stop watching the show to not get spoiled, and I start reading the book. And guess what? I love the book. I love it so much that it becomes my #1 favorite book of the year. It is truly amazing. And then after I finish Normal People, I read Beautiful World, Where Are You? And even though it's not as good as Normal People or Combos, it is still a very, very good book that I love and that I basically inhale in a few days. So yeah, Sally Rooney just takes over my life. I read all of her books in like 2 weeks, and I get obsessed so much. So you're wondering, if you didn't like Normal People back in 2020, why the heck did you love it now? Well, back in 2020, I was still in high school, and I did not have the same brain and the same experiences that I have now. I truly feel that in order to love Normal People, you need to be at least in university or older. I think that if you read it before you go to university, you might like it, but you're not going to relate to it. You're not going to see yourself in it. So Normal People is about 2 characters, Connell and Marianne. They meet in high school. They basically start out as like enemies, but then they slowly begin a relationship with each other. But because Connell is popular and Marianne is a weirdo, an outcast, despite the fact that she's rich, they do not make their relationship official. Connell is afraid to claim that Marianne is his girlfriend, and so Marianne gets neglected and nothing really truly happens in high school. Then they go to university. Marianne gets very popular. Connell is the underdog there. And so Marianne has this glamorous life. Connell is trying to fit in, but because he's from a background that is different from many other people there, because he's poor and he's from a dysfunctional family, I guess, he only lives with his mom, he doesn't really make it there as easily as Marianne. He doesn't become one of the popular elite guys at the university. So he struggles to fit in and he feels like an outcast. I love this character dynamic so much. It is very interesting to read, and I see myself in Connell a lot because I am someone who is an immigrant and who, with my own achievements, happened to go on a very, very good university. And I did feel that difference of me and other kids who were from rich families and who had more opportunities throughout their life than I had, because I just came to America like in the middle of 11th grade. There's basically a part towards the end where Connell talks to his therapist where the kids at his school basically have this like Olympics game of comparing how much money do their parents make. I literally teared up. I hear people crying because of normal people, and I'm like, I cried too, but I don't think we cried for the same reasons. A lot of people, I feel like, cry because it is so painful to see their relationship deteriorate and them not being together. I cry because of social class. It is so relatable because I do have those kids that say, oh, well, my dad went to this school and my dad is this, and just shut up. I am here through my own achievements, and I don't want to talk about my parents. I feel like a lot of people talk about Sally Rooney as a romance author, which I completely disagree with. She does not write about romance. She writes about social class and how that affects character relationships and character dynamics, and how people live their lives and how people communicate with each other. That is it. Next, we have Conversations with Friends. This is about two ex-girlfriends, now just best friends, Bobby and Frances. Frances is the main character. She's a bisexual queen. We love bisexual representation. And basically they meet this couple that are older than them. Frances begins a relationship with the guy, and Bobby begins a relationship with the woman. And it's obviously like an affair, but we mostly follow Frances's relationship with the guy whose name I don't remember, but the show, he's played by Taylor Swift's boyfriend. The last line infuriates me. A book that makes you feel like that obviously deserves 5 stars. So it was definitely a book that I was liking one second and I was disliking the other second. I was like going back and forth. Okay, I don't know if I love this book or hate this book because it's making me feel so many feelings. I was like, wait a second. If a book is making me feel so many feelings, that must mean it's a good book, right? Obviously, there were so many quotes by the end that I was like underlining. My favorite quote of the year is in this book. And so by the end, I was like, this has to be 5 stars. It just can't be anything else. And then in the end, I read Beautiful World, Where Are You? The only reason why this is not my favorite, it's I think because the characters are older. I don't relate to them because like they're almost 30. But I do relate to some of the conversations that the main character Alice has with her best friend, because they send each other emails and they're basically diary entries, and they talk about like the randomest stuff possible, but also they talk about how the world works, and they talk about politics, and they talk about how the meaning of life is maybe just having conversations and relationships with people who we love. And even though the world might end one day, at least we had these, at least we made these connections, and it's all that matters in the end. So yes, it's about basically these two friends and how they live their lives and how they navigate their romantic relationships and their friendships and their jobs and their mental health. It's a plotless book, which I think also contributes to the fact that I don't really like it as much. At least Normal People has a trajectory because we kind of follow two characters through their university lives, but I think it still deserves to be in this spot because it has a lot of great conversations that I love. Going forward next year, I do want to keep reading similar stuff to the things I mentioned, but I also want to prioritize speculative fiction because in 2021, so many of my books were fantasy, sci-fi, horror, speculative basically. And this year, I did not pick up any speculative fiction, which I did pick some of them, but they were disappointments. Like, for example, I picked Cloud Atlas back in January. I thought I was gonna love it, and I did not love it. I'm sorry, I just didn't. But I do want to prioritize speculative fiction. I'm currently reading Babel by R.F. Kuang and loving it, but it's also like not as speculative. It's mostly just like a history lesson. And yeah, I want to do that more in the future. And as always, click like and subscribe. And happy reading for 2023. See you next time, whenever that will be. Bye!